All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's presentation on no documentation received denials, the 56900 and RARC M127. So my name is Mary Sue Gardner. I am a registered nurse on the Provider Outreach and Education Department, and I'm joined today by other members of the Provider Outreach and Education Department, as well as Medical Review Department. And we are going to focus today's presentation on those no documentation received denials. On your screen right now is our disclaimer. We show our disclaimer in every event. And basically what our disclaimer says is the information we prepared for you today is current and true for the Medicare laws, rules, and regulations as they stand today. If the laws, rules, and regulations change tomorrow, it's your responsibility as a provider to make sure you are following the most current laws, rules, and regulations. So CMS's laws, rules, and regulations will be the final determination on coverage. CMS also prohibits you from recording this presentation or taking screenshots for any profit-making purposes. Since we do not know why you would be recording or taking screenshots, we ask that you please do not do that. And we are doing you the courtesy of recording it for you, and it will be available on our live events page and probably within a week. Now, Medicare's full of acronyms, so there's a lot of acronyms that I may use today, and if I should happen to refer to an acronym that you don't recognize, just go ahead and refer back to this acronyms list. If I happen to say something that isn't on this list and you don't know what it is, just go ahead and put that in the chat, and one of my associates will send that definition over to you. All right, so my objective for today is that you learn about the no documentation received denials, namely 56900 and M127. And I'm going to achieve this goal, this objective of you today by giving you an explanation of the ADR. We're going to talk about how to respond to those ADR requests. We're going to also talk about what documentation to send if you do get an ADR request, and then what your next actions are if you receive a 56900 or no documentation received denial. So before we define the ADR, let's define medical review. Medical review involves the collection and clinical review of medical records and all sorts of related information to ensure that payment is made only for services that meet Medicare coverage and coding and billing and medical necessity requirements. And this is done by Medicare medical review contractors through an additional documentation request, or ADR. So Medicare fee-for-service medical reviews are conducted by Medicare administrative contractors, the Supplemental Medical Review Contractor, or SMRC, the Recovery Audit Contractor, or otherwise known as RACs, and even the Unified Program Integrity Contractor, or UPIC. And there could be others too that CMS names at a later time to do medical review. So that brings us to what is an ADR. An ADR, an additional documentation request, is a letter that's generated when documentation is necessary to support a Medicare claim. So this request is for medical record documentation to support payment of an item or items or services that are reported on the claim. And this is really done to help ensure compliance with Medicare coverage, coding, payment, and even billing policies. All right. So where is an ADR sent? The ADR is going to be sent to a provider's practice address that's on file with Medicare. So to help ensure you're receiving your ADRs to the correct address, be sure that you periodically check and update, if needed, your medical review correspondence address in the PACOS, or Provider Enrollment Change in Ownership System. And you can find that information on our website at wpsgha.com, as well as right here on your screen, I've provided you a link to the PACOS information. And once you get that handout, then you will have that link available to you. So your ADR requests can also be found in the WPS provider portal, so the secure section of our website. And our providers can use the portal to view their additional documentation request letters and any demand letters for up to 90 days after we issue them. While it's not required, providers can also respond to ADR and demand letters via the portal. So to locate your letters in the portal, you would go to the letter search under your correspondences. And I'm going to show you what this looks like now from our portal user manual. So give me just a second and open the website. And Jennifer, can you verify that you are seeing our website?
Yes, we are.
Great, perfect, thank you. Okay, so when you go to wpsgha.com, and the secure section of our website that I'm talking about is this part. This is the public side where you don't have to have a login or password to find anything. This is where the general information is. But if you want the claim-specific information, then you would have to have the ability to log in to our secure section of our portal. But I'm going to show you via the portal user manual what things look like. So I click the portal user manual, and I am first going to select my jurisdiction. I'm just going to choose J5A because it's the first one, and I'm going to accept that. Again, I use this link right under the login to go to the portal user manual. All right, and then after that, I am going to scroll down, and I'm trying to go kind of slow so not to cause a seizure in anyone that's looking. And at this time, I'm going to go to the letter search overview. So in the letter search overview, this gives you information about how to access and find your letters. Now, I can't log into the secure section of the portal and show you live because that would show secure information. Plus, I don't have access to that. So the best way for me to show you this is to show you via our portal user manual. So to find your letters, you can go down to accessing your letter search. So under your My Correspondence tab, which at this time runs down the left side of the screen once you're logged on, you're going to see you have a couple of options for ADR and demand letters. So I'm just going to go a little bit forward, choose the ADR and demand letters so you guys can kind of see how it works. And then this gives you the information of how to perform a letter search. So you're going to put in the information that you want to see any available ADR letters. Your ADR letters are then going to come up and they will be viewable for you in this manner. Now, with all that being said, I do want you to know that WPS is really working diligently on a new look and feel of the secure section of our website. So if you've been with WPS long enough, you know we changed the open section of our website currently, and we have this great new look and feel. The ease of use is so much more user-friendly, a lot less clicks to get to things, and a lot nicer layout. We're doing the same thing on the user side. We are improving the functionality. We are improving our servers. We're improving the look and feel, and we're making it so it's a lot less clicks for our providers to use. So please note that in the upcoming months, probably the end of spring, beginning of summer is when we're shooting for, that will be coming out. So watch our training center and our e-news where our live events are on the training center, and the e-news information about when education will be available on using the new portal. So as soon as we start getting pictures from the development team, we're going to start putting together some education to show you, to make it easier to help prepare you. So when you're going out to look for your letters, you're going to be able to find that ADR letter just as easy as you are when I showed you now, actually even easier. So with that being said, minimize this and go back to the slide deck. So there are some time frames in which a person, a facility, a provider needs to respond to a request for additional documentation. Prepayment and post-payment reviews from us, your Medicare administrative contractor, and post-payment reviews from the SMRC and the RAC need to be responded to within 45 calendar days. Now, on the previous slide, we mentioned how we send you a letter, and that letter goes to whatever address is on file, and we also post that letter information in the provider portal. So you have a couple different ways to watch for it. We know that sometimes an ADR request can go to a corporate office, and maybe they don't send that hard copy letter to you right away, or maybe no one ever sends it to you at all and you don't know about it. That's why it's really important to have two ways of knowing if something has stopped processing in your system or has requested medical review on a post-pay basis. So you don't miss this 45-day mark and you don't get that denial on your claim. So prepayment reviews by the UPIC, the Unified Program Integrity Contractor, the ones that do Medicare fraud, waste, and abuse, their prepay and post-pay time frame is a little bit different. It is actually 30 days, so it is shortened. And the next one would be the CERT contractor. And I've got a separate slide on that at the end because their time frame is different altogether. So we're going to talk about them all by themselves. But what's important for you guys to know is there are certain time frames established. If it is a prepay review request by any entity, we have no control of stopping that. It's a system, it's loaded in the system. As soon as that claim moves into a location that generates that ADR letter, the clock starts ticking. And you are bound to those time frames to get that documentation to us, or you are going to end up getting a no documentation received denial. All right, so responding to an ADR request, how do you respond? So when preparing your documentation, it's best practice to attach a copy of that ADR letter as a first page to ensure that all of your documentation matches the appropriate patient, the appropriate claim. So providers and suppliers should submit all the necessary documentation to support your services for that billing period that we're asking to review. And keep in mind, this may include documentation happened prior to the dates of service that we requested. You really need to review the documentation guidelines that are listed in the ADR request, as well as any information that's posted on the medical review section of our website. If you are under a targeted probe and educate review, you're also going to be contacted by that nurse analyst that's in charge of your reviews, and they're going to send you a welcome packet. And part of that welcome packet includes the information of what you need to send for that specific service. So make sure you're following those appropriately. If your request was made by another entity, such as a CERT contractor, RAC contractor, SMRC, visit their website and see if they have any additional documentation requirements on there that are listed as well. So if you have documentation that you believe helps support medical necessity, then submit it, even if it wasn't requested by that review entity. Remember, this can include documentation that was outside of the dates of service in question. So for instance, in the SNF facility, we may be looking at March dates of service. However, maybe the patient was admitted in January and something like the therapy initial assessment took place in January. We're going to need that initial assessment information and documentation to help support the March dates of service if their therapy continued that long. So documentation can be received by us, your MAC, in several different ways, and that includes U.S. mail, ESMD, via the portal, fax, even mail by like a compact disc or a digital video disc or DVD or a USB. So we'll move on and talk about some of those as well. So when you submit documentation, when you're responding to that ADR request, as we said at the start of this event, Medicare administrative contractors or MACs request documentation from the billing provider when we need more information to make an initial claim determination. So as the billing provider, it's your responsibility for returning the documentation that the MAC requested within 45 days of the ADR letter. If the MAC does not receive the documentation timely, we're going to process the claim without the necessary information, which is going to result in a claim denial or rejection. So on our website, we also, under our medical review tab, we also have a link for responding to medical review ADRs. I'll link out to that and show you really quick where that is. So on your slide, it went automatically to that letter, but under the topic center, you would go to medical review, and then you'll find that under the guides and resources, responding to a Medicare ADR request. So you can click on that, and then it will give you the information on responding to the individual ADR requests. So a few things that are on your upcoming slides, and I'm just going to show you why we're on the portal instead of going back and forth through the slides. So again, when you respond to an ADR letter, I said before, you have several different mechanisms in which you could respond. You can respond via our portal. So if that is the practice you're going to take, and that is actually the best way to do it, make sure you're following the rules and regulations that we have regarding that. Now, a file size can't be larger than 15 megabits at this time. So we give you information also on how to break that up if you need it. If you want to respond by mail, USPS, we give you a couple of options on how to do that, whether it's a paper copy or whether you're sending a CD or DVD or even a flash drive. If you're doing it CD, DVD, or flash drive, there's some really important information that you need to follow on how to make that information secure. So please make sure you go through the information. If you are sending via USPS or a mail delivery service, make sure that you are following or using the addresses for your correct jurisdiction and part of Medicare. So if I'm a J5 MAC Part A facility, this is where I send my information. If I am Part B, this is where I send my information. If I am in J8, Indiana or Michigan, and I'm Part A, then again, here's where I send my information, and J58 Part B. Now you note that these PO boxes are different, and if you send things to the wrong address, it may inhibit us getting them and getting them marked as received, and you may get a no documentation received denial because it got lost in the processing. It went to the wrong PO box, which means it got loaded to the wrong batch of work, etc. So make sure that you are on the correct part of Medicare and the correct jurisdiction before you choose those addresses. Now, same thing holds true with responding by fax. Each jurisdiction and each part has a different fax number. So as you can see, as I click through those, that fax number changes. Make sure if you're responding via fax, you download that ADR letter, include it on top of the documentation that you're going to run through the fax or you're going to load to your fax server, and make sure you send it to the correct fax number. And then finally, if you want to respond by ESMD, we give you information and actually send you out to the ESMD project information to help navigate you through that. All right, so let's go back to the slideshow. All right. So here's where we get to what happens if you don't respond to that ADR request. Failure to respond to that ADR request is going to result in a denial. So if a contractor gives a provider or supplier notice and time to respond to ADR, and the provider or supplier does not provide the additional documentation in a timely manner, we as the contractor have the authority to deny the claim. So this is what we call the 56900 or M127 denial that you see. This is not a medical necessity denial. So this is not appealable. So let's start looking at this a little bit more. 56900 denial code, again, is no documentation received within that listed time frame. And like we said at the beginning, generally 45 days of the ADR request. RARC M127 indicates a claim denial due to the absence of the patient's medical record for the billed services. So again, this denial is automated with prepay requests. So as soon as the time frame and date hits and the claim has not been marked as received, the denial is going to append. So it's a good rule of thumb to have internal processes in place that are less days than required by the Medicare contractor. So this is going to allow you ample time to gather the documentation and submit before time runs out. So if your Medicare time frame is 45 days, then we strongly encourage you as a facility or a provider to set your deadline for yourself at 30 days. Once documentation is received on our end, we manually move that claim into a received location. So Part A providers, if you're looking in the FIS system, you can see the claim has moved into SMR doc. That is a medical review documentation received location. Part B, unfortunately, the MCS system does not run like the FIS system for Part A, so you cannot see that in the MCS system. So if you have concerns about if we've received it, you can contact customer service and they can see on the back end or on their end if, you know, documentation has been received. So remember, if your claim denied for no documentation received, you cannot appeal these. There has not been a medical review decision, either an automated or manual, for medical necessity. So there's not appeal rights. What you can do is request the claim be reopened and considered for review. And there's some standards listed on the slide to help you understand what criteria must be met. So basically you had to fail timely submission through the request for ADR. Generally that's 45 days, unless it's the UPIC, that's 30 days. The claim has to be denied because the documentation was not received timely. So 56900 denial, M127 RARC. The requested documentation received after the 45-day period with or without a request for redetermination and reopening, and the request is filed within 120 days of the date of receipt of initial determination. So some time frames here to request a reopening review of the claim. So you're after the 45 days, but you're not as far out as 120 days. As we move on, what happens if all four of those criteria are not met to request that we reopen and consider it for medical review? So if it cannot meet all four criteria for the request to have us reconsider it and reopen it to look at, you could probably submit a redetermination. Chances are, if you do not meet one of these previous criteria, then it probably wasn't a claim that failed to meet the documentation timeliness requirements. It was probably some sort of medical necessity denial. So in the event of a medical necessity denial, you do have appeal rights. So a redetermination then could be requested. You'd follow the redetermination process. It has to be submitted before 120 days from the date of the denial. So on this slide, you can find a link to the IOM instructions regarding redetermination process, but you can also visit the WPSGHA.com website and check our Appeals Topic Center. We have that information for you as well. So if we did accept your request and you met the criteria and it was within the time frame, then what's going to happen? One of basically three things. We're either going to pay it, we're going to partially pay it, maybe we pay some of it and we deny some of it, or we're going to flat out deny it. So if we make a claim medical review determination on it and it results in a partial pay, so some services aren't paid but some are, or a full denial, then you do have appeal rights. And again, remember, follow the redetermination process. Submit your redetermination request to WPS. Make sure that is done within 120 days. All right, so before I conclude, I want to talk about a few subtle differences in the processes that you should be aware of. So the information on your slide is about a clerical error reopening. And a clerical error reopening is not the same as a request for reopening based on missing the ADR timeline. A clerical error reopening is for minor errors or omissions on the claim. And that includes things like mathematical mistakes or transposed procedure or diagnostic code, or maybe too many units or not enough units, misapplication of a fee schedule, or a computer error. So if you find that you need to correct a claim because of a minor clerical error, you would want to follow the directions in the internet-only manual that are listed on the slide. And again, on WPSGHA.com, we have the information available for you as well on clerical error reopenings. And finally, I said at the beginning of this presentation, I'm going to take CERT contractor, and I want to discuss them separately because their time frames are a lot different than the MACs, the RACs, the SMRC, and even the UPIC. So as you can see on this slide, the time frame to respond to a request is slightly longer than it is to respond to a MAC request. So the CERT deadline actually goes out to 76 days from that initial request before it's moved to a no documentation received denial. So again, if you follow the information on this slide, there's an initial letter that's sent at day 0, notifying that you have 45 days to respond with documentation. If they don't see or hear anything by day 21, someone's going to be calling you and see if you need assistance. Now, this could be the CERT contractor or more likely someone from the MAC, someone from us, seeing if you need help and if you plan to respond. By 30 days of no response, they're going to send you a second letter notifying you that you only have 15 days left. And then again, at 35 days, if we still don't see anything or the CERT contractor doesn't, someone again is going to call you because your response really is due at day 45. If they haven't received it, they're going to send you a letter and let you know that you're late. Your response then, after you've gone past that 45 days, is considered overdue. And on day 49, you're getting another telephone call and another letter, which will happen at day 60. And then by day 76, then they've kind of written you off as going to respond, and you're going to get your information's going to, or your claim is going to deny as no documentation received, which ultimately results in us, your MAC, doing a take back of the money that you were previously paid. So just kind of to wrap things up, recap what we learned today. And I want to start out by saying, before we recap, an error is an error. So if you think that not submitting documentation because it's not worth your time or effort, maybe it's a $10 claim or maybe even less, you're only hurting yourself by not responding. You're hurting yourself and your practice. This is because an error is an error. So responding to documentation requests that are made on behalf of Medicare by one of its review entities is part of your participation agreement when you signed up to be a Medicare provider. So when a provider repeatedly has denials and is not responding, then this sets up red flags. A referral to the UPIC can be made for fraud, waste, and abuse. You could be put on 100% prepay review. You could have complete revocation of the ability to be a Medicare provider, and et cetera. The list goes on. So it is a red flag on your facility if you repeatedly do not respond to ADR requests because you just don't feel it's worth your time or money. So truth be told, if you don't want us looking at you, then respond to the request. All right. So today, we learned about those no documentation received denials and what happens when you don't respond. And we accomplished this today by explaining what an ADR is and how you should respond, including what documentation to submit and how to look for that information, as well as what happens or what you can do if you do receive a 56900 or M127 denial, which means, again, no documentation received. So that leads us to our time for questions and answers. So I'm going to ask my colleagues at this time if we've had any questions come into the chat.
There's no questions in the chat right now, Mary Sue.
So on behalf of myself and all of Provider Outreach and Education, as well as Medical Review, we want to thank you for your participation in today's event. This concludes our webinar, and you may now disconnect. Thank you.